Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. So in this one here, I want to talk about Carol potentially meeting Rick one day, and I guess Carol in the Rick movies, because that is a possibility. Also, Carol and Negan's relationship. Melissa McBride did an interview recently where she talked about all that kind of stuff, and so I'll leave a link down below if you want to go check out the articles. There's two articles where I got this from. Both of them are from comicbook.com, because they seem to have the best Walking Dead news. It's pretty crazy. Like, they're constantly posting articles on, I don't know, they just seem to have everything, it seems like. But of course, before we go any further, I do have to warn you for spoilers, obviously, for The Walking Dead Season 10, episodes 1 to 14. So Melissa McBride, like I said, gave her thoughts on two things. One, on whether or not Carol will one day meet Rick and what that would be like or something like that. And two, does she trust Negan? Like, does Carol trust Negan? And so I guess first let's talk about the more exciting one, I would say, which is Carol meeting Rick one day. This is from comicbook.com right here. I guess I'll read this little excerpt here. It just says, according to McBride, the bring him home themes always was the sentiment when the subject was Rick Grimes. Since we saw him lift off in that helicopter, Rick's final episode of The Walking Dead aired in the form of episode 905 in the fall of 2018. I haven't talked to him in a while, McBride admits. I know he's doing some stuff, but I haven't talked to him in a while. And I talked to him through other people. I get the lowdown, so I'm very anxious to see what his work is on The Walking Dead in The Walking Dead world. And I just thought it was cool to see Melissa McBride talking about, Andrew Lincoln and the Rick Grimes movies, and I guess the theme of Bring Him Home, which I really like that. That part of it I love so much. Like, that's why I just did a video on this, but I think that's why Judith should tell Daryl and Carol and all of them, because that could be the theme going forward until Rick gets home, right? Like, bring Rick Grimes home, which is super exciting. I want to see more of that story. But I feel like if our characters find out about Rick, that could be really exciting and interesting, because how do certain characters react to it, right? Like Daryl, does he just want to leave? Obviously, he can't go and leave because Judith is there. I don't think he's going to want to leave her. And maybe you have certain other characters who aren't really as optimistic, who think, well, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Or maybe you shouldn't be saying this because people are going to get their hopes up, sort of thing. Or maybe you have someone like Negan who could be very optimistic and is like, well, if I know anything about Rick Grimes is that, he survives, he finds a way to survive. Or maybe Daryl says that, right? Or I guess a lot of those characters at this point, I think, would probably say that. But you could have some characters who don't think that, which I think would be really interesting. Imagine Father Gabriel. Imagine if they're like, you shouldn't be spreading this around because you're just giving hope to people. I guess that would even fit Carol, honestly. If Carol was just like, you shouldn't be telling people this because like they're all going to think that Rick's alive and that he could be coming back, and you're giving hope to people where there is none, sort of thing, right? As for Carol in the Rick Grimes movies, I think that would be pretty interesting. The only issue I have with any of our characters on the show going into the movies is that you're taken away from the show. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be okay with it if the show ended and then they were just going to do movies, and so they went on to do, these movies with this giant cast and they had this different storyline, sort of thing. I'm totally okay with that. I think the issue I have with it really just in general is that, like, you're just taken away from the show. It's the same reason why I hated the fact that Morgan was gone and Dwight. That stuff was just so frustrating. I hated that they left the show. With Morgan, I was a little more accepting, but after we got the first episode or two, I was like, I hate this shit. And so overall, I think the way I want this to play out really is, I want Rick to return to the show and then the show ends. That's kind of what I want. And obviously that's not going to happen for a while, because if they're doing 3 movies, that third movie might not be out for 5, 6, 7, 8 years at this point, right? So that might not be for a while. So the show can go on for a lot longer. But I think that would be a nice end, though. And that's why I think the reunion has to happen on the show and not in the movies, because The Walking Dead, I think, is Rick's story. I know it's everyone's story, and I totally get that. But I always view it as Rick's story, because he was the first character we met. I view it as his story, then I kind of go through, then it's Morgan's story, sort of thing, just because he was the second character we met, for the most part anyways. And if this reunion happens in the movies and the show just ends and there's no reunion there, it's always just going to feel a little bit off. And obviously all of them coming together, finding out that Rick's alive, seeing him for the first time, those moments are going to happen. It's going to. There's no way it's not going to. Imagine if we never got that. That would just be the saddest thing ever, I think. Like, I think we're going to get a moment like that where we see Rick Grimes with Daryl again. I think we're going to see that, where Rick sees his daughter, meets RJ for the first time. I think we're going to get these moments. It just has to happen. It could be followed by a death, though. Rick could die at some point afterwards. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I would just like to have a happy ending, I think, for Rick Grimes at this point, because his exit of the TV show was so sad already. I feel like if he comes back, that should be the final part of his story, is You have these movies, it ends in a way where it's exciting, they're going home, and then in the television show, it's the final season of The Walking Dead. We see Rick return home. They're dealing with this last thread or whatever they're doing at this point, and then the show just ends and maybe certain characters die. Obviously, I think it's going to be bittersweet. I don't think it's going to be fully happy, but I think in terms of Rick being alive, the fact that he actually made it home, and this kind of wraps back around to what Melissa McBride was saying, which was, bring him home, I think would just be absolutely amazing. And I think it would close the book. It would bookend this entire story, which was in the beginning, we saw Rick trying to find his family. And at the end, he made it home. And I think it would be a really beautiful story of The Walking Dead. It could be on season 20 at that point, 18, 19, 20, 21, I don't know. But I think it would just be a really amazing zombie apocalypse story. I think you can definitely do that. That's why I think the reunion should happen on the show, not in the movies. And if it happens in the movies, it's just, I don't know. But obviously, we're going to see they know what they're doing. They're better at their job than obviously I am. So I trust them with what they're doing. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Now, also, I want to talk about why Carol trusts Negan, because that's kind of an interesting new storyline that's been happening recently. Obviously, the other day, we got Carol and Negan's first scene. Well, not the other day. That was like, 3 weeks ago? That was the end of episode 12 already. Jesus, that was almost 3 weeks ago. That's crazy. Anyways, Melissa McBride talked about that a little bit, and she had to say, I think she certainly knows and has heard stories, and he's a legend, but in a way of a bit of a mythical character because she wasn't there, McBride said. It's the first time we've ever seen them together and the first time they've ever seen one another, I believe. So there is that separation factor and knowing what he could quite possibly be capable of. And he also has the most to gain if she's looking for a cohort to help her catch or kill the alpha. I really do think their relationship could work. And I'm going to just kind of connect this in with this. And that is, can they ever be a couple? And I think they totally could. I'm not really one for shipping people. I think I did ship Carol and Daryl, but that was way back in season 2 and 3, and I was a lot younger then, and I'm embarrassed I'm embarrassed that I was ever a shipper, which I guess it's not really that big of a deal, but for me personally. But I would say here, I think it could work. I think Carol and Negan's relationship, if they ever got together, I mean, damn, they would be, because they're both very smart people. They're both very smart, and I think Negan's really immature, so there's that, which I think could definitely hurt his point of view on certain things. Because obviously, like we had All Out War, he was the leader of the Saviors, and we saw his point of view and all that. Rick taught him a lot, and since then he's been learning a lot through Rick, even though Rick hasn't really been around. But Alexandria was built on Rick's ideas, right? And Negan's learning a lot from that right now, and I think that's why ultimately he is a better person. Carol, I think, could probably use someone like Negan in her life just because he's such a fun person. He's just out there, and they both think alike, I feel like they're both very similar characters. Maybe that's why they would never work. I'm not too sure. Carol and Ezekiel, I mean, obviously that relationship does work because they're both, I think Ezekiel, he definitely fixes whatever is wrong with Carol, I would say. Like when Ezekiel is in Carol's life, Carol is way more grounded, way more happy. But I think it just depends on whether or not Carol really wants that, Carol, I think, is better off on her own. And I think that's what we learned in episode 14 is that she is just better off on her own. She doesn't really need to be with anybody, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting idea. The only reason why I brought it up is because a lot of people were starting to ship them online. I was seeing a lot of comments. Everyone was saying, oh, Carol and Negan, like they got to get together. Like that would be the ultimate duo. And I do agree. I think if something like that happened, I mean, what would that do to Daryl? Holy shit. Daryl would just be, I mean, yeah, he would have to get really pissed off about that because she's sleeping with this guy who, we'll see though. We have to wait and see what happens here between Daryl and Negan because that's I don't know how they're going to operate. We saw a little bit of it in episode 14 and I think it could definitely work really well. But if Carol and Negan ever got together, I don't think Daryl would ever accept it and really be able to get that close with Negan, right? Because Daryl is very protective of Carol, I would say. And so if Negan's with her, he has to be able to trust him to take care of Carol. And obviously, I think Daryl trusts Ezekiel, so that's why he's never really had an issue with any of that. But yeah, I don't know. This whole shipping thing was a little interesting. Seeing it online, I was like, oh, I guess that could work. That'd be a little weird, but that probably could work. So overall, I mean, I do think in general that Carol and Negan, I think Carol is going to hold up her end of the bargain. Because after episode 14, I saw a lot of people mad at Carol for what she did. She didn't blow off Negan sort of thing. She just said she needed to have some time on her own. and she did, and we saw her return back to Alexandria. So I think she is going to start to tell people about, what he did. Negan was responsible for Alpha's death, and I think that really is going to be as simple as that. I think she will hold up her end of the bargain, but I think we're not going to be able to see a lot of it right now because of what they're dealing with. I think that's going to be a thing in season 11. Carol and Negan, how they're going to work together, that's going to be a really huge part or a huge factor of season 11. Right now, we're dealing with this horde, trying to survive this horde. We're probably going to get Daryl and Negan fighting together, which will be really fun. Beta will be in there too. We could get Beta's death scene. But I'm going to leave it here, so make sure to post your thoughts down below on Carol in the Rick movies. And also, do you think Carol and Negan could ever be a couple? Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.